Penn State needs to do this one thing on offense against Nevada, FIU, and Villanova, because if they don't, it's going to cost them against Oregon.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State football, and as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day, your daily source for all things Penn State sports. My name is Zach Seyko, and I'm your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. We're going to talk about, don't look past these three non-conference games, because Penn State needs to do this one important thing to help set them up for that big game against Oregon. You're not exactly going to be battle tested the same way that the Ducks are, but you can check a box that you absolutely need, and it will create a domino effect going into the rest of the season for Big Ten Conference play. We're also going to have a look ahead for Nevada. That's a 45-point spread. Should you be thinking Penn State or Nevada? We're going to talk to Chris Murray, Wolfpack expert from Nevada SportsNet, to break it all down as an early preview. Now, let's get into what I'm referring to. Just throw it deep? Not necessarily, not exactly, but this is something that I pointed out before, but I actually want to encapsulate it here and define it. Penn State does need to air the football out against Nevada, against Florida International, against Villanova. You're going to be able to do it because those teams just aren't as good as you, but you need to start creating the building blocks, the foundation for what your passing attack is going to look like throughout the season without giving too much away. I'm not saying you you show every card in the deck for Oregon, for Ohio State. You put some things strategically on film to maybe confuse the Ducks or have them thinking about it defensively. But you have to build that chemistry. You have to build that rapport if you are Drew Allar in this passing attack. And you have to do it against teams with inconsequential types of situations. You're not going to get blindsided by an FCS Villanova team, Florida International, Nevada. You are going to be able to try some things, to do some things that aren't going to bite you in the end if you make a mistake. But by doing those things, by making those mistakes early on and seeing what you have in the passing attack, you set yourself up against Oregon, because you don't want to be figuring things out and testing the waters against Oregon, that's going to be a top 5 matchup. That is going to be a top 5 game when it rolls around at the end of September for the Whiteout. So why does Penn State need to air it out? Well, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but let's lay it all out here. Drew Allar threw to Tyler Warren a ton. He also worked with Trey Wallace for the better part of multiple years. Same thing with Amari Evans. All of that is gone, for better or for worse. You lose, and again, maybe this is a good thing. Sometimes you have to go backwards to go forwards. Penn State lost everything from its passing attack a year ago, and they brought in Devontae Ross out of Troy, Kyron Hudson out of USC, and then Trevor Pena late in the process. You got to build that chemistry. You have to build that rapport, or else it's going to be an issue going into the later part of the season. So yes, air the ball out against Nevada, air the ball out against FIU, air the ball out against Villanova within reason. Within reason. I don't think Drew Allar should have 50, 60 passing attempts, but you need to throw the ball right out of the gate. Those first couple of drives, set the tone. Get the ball to Trevor Pena immediately. Factor him in. Design some plays for him specifically. Oh, well, it's still those 3 cupcake teams. You don't want to do that. You don't want to show things. Actually, yes, you do. And Andy Kotelnicki, Jim Knowles, and any of the position coaches, James Franklin, would all agree with me, because they've said this before. You put some things strategically on tape to get the opposing defense to at least think about it, to consider it. You don't give everything away, but you show some things. But it's more about the tangible, the practice of it against live opponents. You can only learn so much about yourself in practice. You need to be able to do it against live competition, even though this competition is going to be weaker. You want Allar to be on the same page with Trevor Pena. There are going to be growing pains. You want him to be on the same page with Kyron Hudson, with Devontae Ross. Again, doing it over the course of a spring season, no defenders over the summer, with some timing and some routes. It's not the same. And when it's an iron sharpens iron type of situation, you're trying to make your teammates better. But when the guy across from you doesn't care if you get better, they want to win. They are there to make your job tough and make your day miserable. That is where you can really accomplish things. So those three non-conference games, Penn State, Drew Allar, and this offense, they need to play and get into rhythm as soon as possible with the passing attack. You know what you have with the ground game. You're not going to learn anything about yourself by running with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen dozens and dozens of times. They're going to get theirs. Penn State's going to be leading in a lot of football games this season. Winning teams run the football. So there will be plenty of opportunities to get Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen a football. Plus, you don't want to overutilize them. So talking about, hey, well, you don't want to overshow the passing attack. You don't want to overshow the rushing attack with what Penn State truly has. And I think that they're going to get extremely creative with both Singleton and Allen. You lost Tyler Warren. You lost Bo Prabula. Where's that Wildcat package going to come from? Okay. You see what I'm getting at? Where Singleton and Allen, okay, I'm not saying they're going to throw the football, but you can do some creative things out of a Wildcat formation with two superstar college running backs and two future NFL caliber prospects. Drew Allar just needs to get into rhythm, needs to get into sync, figure out what works for Devontae Ross, what works for Kyron Hudson, Trevor Pena, in particular since he showed up a little later. He didn't have that spring football season to develop with them, build that chemistry. Hudson and Ross did. I'd even say Khalil Dinkins, even though a lot of high praise, a lot of good chatter about what Dinkins can do in this offense, his role just increases significantly. Allar's completed touchdown passes to him before, but now he's your go-to as a tight end. Tyler Warren's not there anymore. And then Singleton and Allen, you're going to use them more in the passing game. You might utilize Quentin Martin and Corey Smith in the passing game. Tyser Denmark, Luke Reynolds, Andrew Rapplier. To an extent, everybody's brand new. So figure that out. Chuck the football deep. Don't be afraid to. I know it was a big joke. It was a meme a couple of seasons ago. But it's honestly not that far-fetched in the first few weeks of the season, because you don't want to be running into serious systematic issues against a top 5 team in Oregon or Ohio State that will absolutely make you pay if you don't have everything in order. So covered a little bit and also got into a portion of the offense that I think we're going to see unfold down the stretch with Singleton and Allen and the creativity there from Andy Kotelnicki. We're going to talk about Nevada specifically. It's not the most enticing matchup, I get it, but hey, it's week 1. It's important. You got to go 1-0. What can Nevada do to make Penn State's day just a little bit tougher? We're going to get the ins and outs, the X's and O's of the Nevada Wolfpack from the expert himself, Chris Murray, coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. You got to download the Gametime app because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. And get this, prices on the app actually drop as it gets closer to showtime. You can save up to 60% off with killer last-minute deals from Gametime. And you can get tickets for both Penn State football and Indiana football games. And if you've never been to either of the stadiums, well, Gametime has a great feature where you can see the point of view in advance. So if you're second guessing yourself or you're not sure what the seat view is going to look like, that's where Gametime comes in, being a game changer. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets or tickets to your favorite shows, sporting events with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. And it is a privilege to be joined by the Nevada expert here on the show, Chris Murray. He is from Nevada SportsNet. So we're going to get a complete overview of the Wolfpack. Head coach, a lot of turnover on the team, what to know about their situation. because Penn State's a 45-point favorite at this point in time. That could be even larger by the time we get to the game. So, Chris, thank you so much for the time. Let's begin with Jeff Choate going into year 2. He's proven to me that he can win, that he knows how to win. He's reached the FCS semifinals with Montana State, but then when you actually go to, you move up a level. Yes, it's the Mountain West Conference, but still, I mean, Boise State made a quarterfinal, and Penn State's very familiar with Boise State recently. So what does year 2 look like for Choate? What are realistic goals for him in this regime?
Well, I think year 1 was a little bit of a disappointment. He obviously inherited a very difficult situation. Nevada was coming off back-to-back 2-10 seasons, last place finishes in the Mountain West, and he said it's not going to be a rebuild, it's going to be a launch. He set the goal in 2024 of having the largest win total improvement in the FBS. And while Nevada was a lot better on the field, it also played the most challenging schedule in program history and ended up going 3-10 overall, 0-7 in conference. Nevada was the only team that played all of the bowl eligible teams from the Mountain West, all 5 of them. Also got SMU, college football playoff team, at a conference as well. So, I think it was disappointing last year that they weren't able to make that launch and get back to a bowl. But that's the goal this year. The goal is at least to win 6 games, to get back to the postseason. You look at Nevada's history, since moving to the FBS, it's been a pretty strong program. It made 14 bowls in a 17-year period prior to the last 3 seasons, and those last 3 seasons have been borderline disasters, going 7-30 overall. That coincided with Jay Norvell leaving Nevada to go in conference to Colorado State after the Wolfpack didn't really have a vision for him, didn't really pay him like one of the top coaches in the Mountain West, even though he was. So the Wolfpack kind of dipped into this hole that it really hasn't seen in its FBS era, and now it's trying to get out of that. And I think, last year wasn't the season Nevada wanted, but there was improvement on the field. I think this year has to be about turning improvement into wins, at least going 500. And that's not going to be easy. Obviously, opening with Penn State's not going to be easy. They still play Boise State and UNLV, 2 teams who think they're going to be in the college football playoff as the group of 6 representative. And you look at the roster with only 4 starters coming back. Nevada picked to finish last in the Mountain West again. So I think the expectations internally are a lot higher than they are on the outside. And I think, like you said, Jeff Choate has proven he can turn, programs around. He did it at Montana State. He has that blue-collar background that I think really fits well with Nevada. He's had some really high-level coaching stops as an assistant at Boise State, Washington State, Florida, most recently at Texas, where he helped Steve Sarkisian turn around the Longhorns. So the resume indicates winning will come. The question is whether this year that will come.
And this team has that turnover that we've mentioned. So forgive me, because the depth chart is so different that it's a lot to project. It's a lot of projection. It's a lot of prediction based on the resources that we have on the internet. Chubba Purdy is going to be the starting QB, right? That's the younger brother of Brock Purdy.
Yeah, that's the plan. And it is hard to project. I mean, Nevada only has 3 starters back on offense, 2 on the offensive line, and then Marcus Bellin, who's a wide receiver. And then on defense, just 1 starter back. Now, there are several guys on the roster who played 3 or 4 games as starters last year, but we kind of used that barrier of starting at least 6 of the games, half of the season, to become a returning starter. So I think you look at the offense, and there's a decent amount of talent coming back. Yes, they lose their quarterback, Brendan Lewis. He transferred to Memphis. Yes, they lose their top 3 rushers. Yes, they lose their top 2 pass catchers. Yes, they lose 3 offensive line starters, including left tackle Isaiah World, who was the number 2 ranked transfer in the portal this offseason. He went to Oregon and is a projected first-round draft pick. So those losses are not going to be easy to replace. But, I think you look at the roster, and I think there is some pretty good talent here. I mean, I think Chubba Purdy, that's going to be the focal point. 6th year in college. He's actually only about 18 months younger than Brock. It seems like Brock's been playing in the NFL for 5 years. And Chubba's still looking for that breakthrough. 2 years at Florida State, 2 years at Nebraska, and now his 2nd year with the Wolfpack. He actually entered the transfer portal because the thought was Brendan Lewis would return this year after being one of the Mountain West best quarterbacks last season. Didn't happen. Lewis ended up hitting the portal and going to Memphis. And yes, this is Chubba Purdy's job. I don't think there are any questions about his legs and what he can do improvising. The bigger questions is, can he run an offense with his arm? I mean, 55% completion percentage in his career, as many interceptions as touchdowns, averaging right about 5.5 yards per attempt. That's a little short as well. He did get 1 start last year against Hawaii, although that was Nevada's 2nd fewest points scored in any game last season. So he played okay in that game, but the offense didn't look nearly as smooth as you would expect. So this is a big year for him in his career. And, the surrounding pieces are maybe not as proven as they would be if everybody came back. But that was, again, the case last year. Nevada didn't have a lot of returning pieces, but the Wolfpack was able to make some stars out of some guys who then moved on to different locations. And I think they're hoping to do the same this season.
Is there any resemblance with Brock and Chubba besides the name? Is there because Brock Purdy is, I mean, he was Mr. Irrelevant, and systems can really make a quarterback, and he's really emerged in the NFL. I'm not trying to imply that Chubba Purdy is going to be just like his brother at some point in time, but is there anything that you says, okay, yeah, they're definitely related, they're definitely brothers, more than just, he's got that, does he have any of that it factor with him?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is that for me, Chubb is more athletic than Brock is. Chubb is a very good athlete. I mean, it kind of seems a little bit silly, but they do a charity softball game against local law enforcement, and he looks like he could even play in that AAA stadium as an outfielder. Like, this is a very fluid athlete who's going to make plays with his legs. The reason he's the front runner to win the job over AJ Bianco, who's a returning fourth-year player, is because he's got more of that improvisation. Nevada's leading rusher last year was its quarterback, Brennan Lewis. So they do designed runs with, their quarterback. You go back to Jeff Choate's 4 years at Montana State. His first 2 years, his quarterback was his leading rusher. So I think he fits the system. In terms of the accuracy and the throwing ability, I would say Chubb isn't necessarily, at the level that Brock was when he was at Iowa State. And I think the biggest question with Chubba is just the injuries. And that's why he hasn't been able to win a starting job long term. He came to Nevada last year expecting to compete for the job, double hernia surgery, kind of backed him up in spring, and then he had shoulder issues at the start of fall camp. And if you're going to run your quarterback a lot, you kind of worry, is that guy going to get injured? And Chubba kind of has a history of being injured at the college level. So I think that's really the biggest concern with him, is can he make it through a full 12-game schedule playing the style of offense Nevada wants, which is really running oriented. The Wolfpack wants to run the ball 60% of the time. They want to shrink the number of possessions in a game. They want to get a couple of turnovers, and that's kind of their pathway to being a successful football team, which they were able to implement quite a bit last year and play a lot of close games. They just couldn't close those close games out. 2-6 in one possession games last year, which is one of the big reasons the Wolfpack finished 3-10 overall.
A brief connection issue there, but we're going to keep the show going. So final portion of this segment before we talk about that 45-point spread and compare Nevada to the juggernaut that is Penn State for this season. Chris, when you hear Nevada X factors, maybe one of them's Purdy, who are the first couple of players or first few players on either offense or defense that come to mind?
I think when you look on the offense, I'd go Herschel Turner Jr. So he's a transfer from Utah State, played in the Bay Area in high school, senior season, more than 3,200 rushing yards and 41 touchdowns. Those are records for that region. Went to Utah State, about 500 rushing yards last year, more than 5 yards per carry, 4 touchdowns as kind of a secondary running back. For me, he's probably Nevada's best running back, and given that the Wolfpack does want to run the ball so much, I think he's really important. Nevada used to be a great running team under the old Chris Alt days. They have not had a 1,000-yard rusher since 2016. When James Butler, who's a star up in the CFL, did so. So, if you want to be a running team, you got to be able to get 5 yards per carry in conference games. And I think Herschel Turner Jr. is somebody who could come out and really do that. On the defensive side of the ball, I mean, there are a lot of question marks. You only have one returning starter. He's a nose guard, kind of just soaks up blocks. A guy named Thomas Whitty, who was a walk-on from Alaska and is 6th year in the program now. So, I think the pass rush is going to be the big question mark. Nevada had only 14 sacks last year in 13 games. They were last in the nation in third down defense because they could not pressure the quarterback. There isn't anybody that you look at the edge and be like, oh, that guy's going to be a star for sure. But there is a kid named Dylan LaBarbera. He kind of emerged late last year. He was a junior college transfer, didn't play a lot early in the season. Started the last month, played pretty well, a little bit undersized. He did force a fumble against Ashton Genty at Boise State, a game Nevada almost won as well against a college football playoff team, but again, lost by a touchdown. I think he's a guy who's going to have a big season if Nevada's going to do what it wants to do on defense, which is create a lot more havoc than last year. There weren't a lot of sacks. There weren't a lot of fumble recoveries. There weren't a lot of interceptions. And all of those things must get better for Nevada to play the kind of football that it wants to.
45-point spread. That's at least where it is at this present moment as we cross over from July into August. And it could get further from that point in time. So let's actually talk about the matchup itself. Penn State versus Nevada. As we've gotten that expert overview, now let's dive into the matchup itself that is coming up next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. So now let's talk about the matchup itself. And Penn State's at home. Nevada, as we've seen, is going through a lot of changes. They're going through a significant rebuild, and Penn State, has a lot of potential. But the thing about the Nittany Lions is that they're going to be hitting the ground running, and I do mean that literally and figuratively. The core is back. Penn State fans know that. But for anybody from the Nevada side of things that are checking out this episode as an early look ahead, Penn State doesn't really have a lot of holes within its team. So when you have your third-year starting quarterback back, second year of the offensive coordinator, and I know that there's some coaching consistency with Nevada itself, but with the constant turnover in the transfer portal and losing a bulk of the team, that Penn State has all that back: quarterback, running backs, offensive line, guys that created that wreaked havoc on the defensive side of things. All of that is together. So in short, Chris, I do think the 45-point spread is justified, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see it expand a little bit more. I don't know how many. I'm not saying that, maybe it gets to 52 or 55. That's a little ridiculous, but I do think 45 is fair, to say the least. But even in that instance, I could see Penn State winning by a little bit more too, because the backups, some of the backups at Penn State, I do legitimately believe would have a case to start at Nevada as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, Nevada should be a major underdog. This is the largest betting line underdog Nevada's ever been since moving to the FBS in 1992. The previous high was 38 when it opened the season 2 years ago at USC. Lost that game 66-13. So they were not able to cover that spread. You look at the last two times Nevada's played a Big Ten opponent. It was Iowa in 2022 and then Minnesota last year. Both times shut out, lost 27-0 in both of those games, and neither of those programs are at the level of Penn State. So the 45-point line is deserved. It did open at 43.5, so it has ticked up a little bit, might continue to tick up. And certainly, Penn State's run game is going to be the big challenge for Nevada. Can the Wolfpack make Drew Allar throw the ball a little bit, or can Penn State just line up 80 times and win the game, ripping off 7 or 8 yards per carry? I mean, that's kind of what Minnesota was able to do at the start of the game last year down there at Minnesota. Nevada's going to get $1.45 million. That's why it's playing this game. You look at Nevada, though. I mean, I know SMU is probably not as good as Penn State is, but Nevada did have SMU down by 9 points with less than 10 minutes to go in the season opener last year as a 25-plus point underdog. That was at home. This is going to be a different challenge against a better team, a more talented team. But, I don't think Nevada truly believes it's going to go in there and win the game, but I do think that they'll go in there. They'll get a great experience playing in one of the top 10 stadiums in college football. And maybe if they can play well for a quarter or two, they put a little bit of pressure on Penn State. But yeah, I mean, everything signals that this game is not going to be very close after halftime. But Nevada, it's a no-lose situation, right? You're expected to lose by 45 points. If you lose by 25, maybe some in the community here with the Wolfpack might call it a win.
So the key for Nevada, let's talk about a margin of defeat here. If they want to make it respectable, 4 or 5 touchdowns instead of 6, 7, or 8 touchdown deficit. The key for Nevada, like you said, is running the football, shrinking the game, minimizing the possessions, because Penn State's offense, for what it's worth, not everybody's going to look at it this way, but they are an explosive group. This is a team that is looking to make the big play, have the explosive run plays, the deep passes over the top, where it can really get out of hand, where Penn State can slow down the tempo. They can run the football, as you mentioned, with 2-star running backs, but they can also hit that big play and strike within 1 to 2 minutes. I mean, they scored against West Virginia in week 1 last season. Now, granted, that's last season, in less than 20 seconds. So it is doable for Penn State there. So if Nevada... How does Nevada want to approach trying to keep this game respectable and not letting it get blown out of proportion?
Well, I think one of the reasons
proportion.
Yeah, one of the reasons Nevada was better last year is it was really good on third down on offense, not on defense. And it was really good in the red zone. I mean, like top 10 in the nation in red zone offense in terms of, getting touchdowns when they got inside the 20. So I think that's going to be the key. I mean, they're going to give up a lot of yards to Penn State, but if they can hold them to field goals, make a couple of key plays, if they can avoid allowing the big chunk play defensively, if they can make Penn State go on 8 to 12 play series, that's automatically going to shorten the game. If they can get a couple of turnovers in there, I don't think they had forced a fumble for like the first 7 or 8 games last year. Not even just taking it away, like recovered it, hadn't even forced a fumble. So all of those things have to be a lot better. They're going to have to be able to get at least 2 or 3 turnovers and not give any up to try and stick relatively close in this game as well. But yeah, I mean, I think third down on defense was so bad for Nevada last year that it's kind of been a focal point So I think that's going to be big as well. And, I don't think Nevada wants to score touchdowns however it can, but I don't think it wants to be scoring in like 1 or 2 minutes. I think they want to go on 10 to 15 play series as well. And make this a 9-possession game. If it gets up to each team's getting 14, 15 possessions, that's a really bad sign for Nevada because that means Penn State's scoring really quickly. So, they're the clear underdog. It's like an FCS when they go to an FBS, and they're going to do everything they can to try and, limit the margin for error, for themselves and try and keep this game as close as possible. Maybe put some anxious feelings into people at Penn State, but it's going to be really difficult. I mean, Nevada's picked last in the Mountain West. Obviously, I'm filling out my AP Top 25 ballot today, and Penn State might be number 1 on that ballot. Probably either them or Texas. So it's a gigantic difference in terms of talent level. And that's just what it is.
And once again, to wrap things up, a big thank you to Chris Murray from Nevada SportsNet to join us here to give an early look ahead to Week 1 and Penn State versus Nevada. I encourage you to go check out his work. Thank you to all of you for joining this show, checking out this episode. Friendly reminder to let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. Become an everydayer if you are not one. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts for all the latest conversations. We're going to talk about the news, the analysis of those headlines for Penn State as everything continues to unfold around football. Wrestling's not too far away. We got basketball. We'll also still talk about recruiting. It is all right here on Locked On Nittany Lions.